we had a plan. I think what we found in the midst of the plan is we had these intervening court cases, and what's really impossible for folks to maybe fully recognize is we really want to protect the children. So we don't want to cut corners. We want to make sure they're going with a parent. We want to make sure they're going with somebody that won't cause them any harm. And as you know, with the first batch, we found 20% were either not parents or had very serious criminal histories.
Talking with the Homeland Security Secretary about the family separation and trying to reunite those families. As you take a look at the numbers as of yesterday, 879 parents reunited, 538 are in the queue, but you have 463 that may have already been deported without their children. So there are a lot of questions remaining about this policy and what comes next. We're back with the panel. Molly.
Well, one of the things I thought was interesting from that interview with Secretary Nielsen was that those 463 kids who are here but their parents were deported, she was saying at the request of the parents to leave without their children, which is just one of these very interesting things about how complex the situation is when people want to come into this country and break laws in order to do so. Just in general, this is going to be a big election issue. You have general support for border enforcement among Americans. You also saw recent polls suggesting that Democratic base voters are fine with getting rid of ICE, Immigration, Customs, and Enforcement. So I think we'll see much more polarized rhetoric on this and just how the country wants to enforce its borders.
It is amazing to see how hot this immigration issue is as an electoral issue. I mean, it moves both sides.
It does. Well, it certainly did for Donald Trump in 2016, and there does seem to be a lot of intensity among the Abolish ICE Democratic base. The soundbite that you played from Secretary Nielsen was in response to your asking, well, did you really kind of mess up when you rolled this zero tolerance policy out? Well, she couldn't admit that. She said we had a plan, but they didn't actually have a very good plan for the other side of the issue when it comes time to either deport people or detain them in the United States. What were you going to do if you separated them from the children?
It was going to be a deterrence.
But to her point, in part it's because it's so complex with the law and what Congress passed, and there's not a uniform kind of way to do it.
There's not a uniform thing. It is really complex, but they did think it was going to be a deterrent. Don't come because you're going to get separated from your kids.
But they haven't made any progress with the Flores settlement, which was what was their biggest barrier. And people don't really oppose family detention, but the courts won't let them do it.
But what about immigration as an issue on Capitol Hill?
Well,
is there any chance of anything, even scaled back, before the midterm?
I don't think so. Donald Trump has said many times he thinks immigration is a great issue for him in the midterms. It activates his base. He is thrilled every time a Democrat talks about abolishing ICE. Most Democrats tear their hair out when they hear another Democrat talking about that, because that's like the worst possible thing for them. When the issue is border security, including maintaining ICE, Republicans win. When the issue is family separations, then Democrats have support of the majority, because most people don't like family separations.
But both parties benefit from not fixing the problem, too. So this is one of the reasons why it'll never get fixed, both because it's a big get-out-the-vote issue for Democrats, but on the Republican side of things, you have a big division between sort of corporate interests that want to see that free flow of immigration versus the base voters who are really wanting rule of law enforcement.
I want to just put up this tweet that really got a lot of attention today. The president saying, I'm very concerned that Russia will be fighting very hard to have an impact on the upcoming election. Based on the fact that no president has been tougher on Russia than me, they will be pushing very hard for the Democrats. They definitely don't want Trump.
Well, Vladimir Putin
These are not the drones that you're looking for.
You know, actually, the administration has made the point, with good reason, that a lot of President Trump's policies on Russia have been significantly tougher, sending, lethal aid to Ukraine, pushing NATO to spend more on defense, starting work on a new INF non-compliant missile, like we accuse them of cheating. So his policies actually are tougher.
Yeah, but Vladimir Putin last Monday said he wanted Trump to be president.
The thing about
to 2016, though, and we're talking
you think
about
that Putin has now changed his mind about Trump? It sure didn't sound like that from everything.
Are you absolutely sure Putin is telling the truth? When Putin says things I want to hear, I believe every word he says.
President Trump, is he telling the truth when he stood at the press conference?
Ryan said he was trolling the Democrats with that tweet.
Which is probably true.
But more than anything, I hope that people take the message that they need to secure their elections.
Yes,
this is not a federal issue. This is a state and really local issue. This is something every American can work on.
Everyone should have paper ballots.
Or other means, something to
that,
actually make sure that it can't be hacked.
And the scariest thing of that interview was how much it's happening and the fact that they got into the electrical grid.
Yep.
Very scary, you know. And about the paper ballots, I go to the Iowa caucuses in every 4 years, and they're around there, and they tear up little bits of paper. They write their vote, they put them in a basket, they count them up, and that's how you do it.
I remember the one Iowa caucus waiting for a white pickup truck filled with pieces of paper to make it from Des Moines to wherever.
It could have been the Rick Santorum night.
That might have been.
Yep.
All right, thank you, panel. When we come back, an unusual way to get into the Oval Office. Finally tonight, while President Trump was in Kansas City today, he invited a 94-year-old World War II veteran on the stage, and it was a classic moment.
He's only 94, and the Secret Service made him walk about 100 yards out of his way, but that's okay. I just want to tell you a few things, may I, Mr. President? I've got time. Hopefully, that you will allow me to bring my family into the Oval Office to meet you. I started to get a little bit concerned when he was finishing.
You have to say yes to that invite, and he did. He invited anybody, really. Thanks for inviting us into your home tonight. That is it for this special report. Fair, balanced, and unafraid. The story hosted by my friend Martha MacCallum starts right now. 94, Martha.
Yeah, do not say no to that man. That would be a bad move.
Yes is the answer.
Thank you, Brett. Good to see you tonight. Breaking this evening, the president, as you know, says that Mueller, Comey and company are pursuing a witch hunt against him. And Patty Blagojevich, the wife of the former governor of Illinois, says she agrees with that. In fact, she claims that the same team did the same thing to her husband, who, as I said, was then the governor of Illinois, who went to prison in part for saying this about his power as governor to pick a Senate replacement for then Senator Barack Obama.
I've got this thing, and it's golden. And I'm just not giving it up for nothing.
You can forget that, right? Good evening, everybody. Welcome to The Story. I'm Martha MacCallum. In her first ever op-ed, which came out today, Patty Blagojevich writes this: little did we know how truly corrupt the Obama-era Justice Department and FBI really were. With pre-dawn raids, overzealous prosecutors, and a flair for big flashy press conferences, we have learned the hard way how some prosecutors have weaponized their unchecked power to criminalize the routine practices of politics and government. She joins me now exclusively tonight. Good to see you once again, Patty. Thank you for being here this evening.
Thank you.
So, you know, the Chicago Tribune has an op-ed that is pushing back. They're saying that you are revising history somewhat in this op-ed. Are they right about that in terms of the timeline? They say, you know, President Obama wasn't even in office when this happened to your husband. And they also say that the claim that the charge about selling the Senate seat was overturned is not exactly accurate. So how do you respond to that?
Well, it was. It's true that it was under the Bush administration that when my husband was arrested in December, but it was the Obama administration that and their Justice Department that made absolutely sure that my husband didn't get anywhere close to a fair trial. They suppressed evidence. They lied to the jury in their closing arguments. They made sure that our evidence, those wiretaps that were so famous, that we didn't. Our wiretaps never even saw the light of day. So it was the Obama Justice Department, and it's the same people that were held over from the Bush Justice Department that made sure that we didn't get a fair trial.
So let me ask you this, because President Trump did bring up a while back on Air Force One the suggestion that, you know, he felt that maybe your husband was his case was handled unjustly and that he had some sympathy for that. Is that getting anywhere? Have you heard any more about the potential for a pardon from the president?
I haven't heard anything at all. We are so grateful for the president to even be thinking about us in that respect. He's given our family a tremendous amount of hope. And, we're confident that the president's going to do what he thinks is right regarding that. We are, we say our prayers every night and hopefully look forward to the day that my husband gets home. But, this whole thing that's happening this weekend is just so familiar to me. I can't believe these people are at it again. They use, whether it's using false information to obtain, warrants or turning, trusted advisors into spies against you. It's like almost like I'm reliving it all over again.
When you talk about this weekend, you're talking about Paul Manafort?
I'm talking. No, I'm talking about like the latest revelations about how the FISA court and how that they used slander. It was essentially opposition research slander against the president to spy on him, and just like the allegation that they used against my husband to get 6 wiretaps on all of our phone lines, was the evidence that they supposedly used was that my husband was going to be doing a lot of fundraising before the end of the year. This was the allegation. So if that doesn't strike terror into the hearts of any American, that they can allege that you're going to fundraise and that's the reason to wiretap you, I don't know who would feel safe.
But what about your suggestion that that the charge about selling the Senate seat, which we played in the beginning, and I know that you say there was a lot of other evidence that you feel should have been submitted on your husband's behalf, and that you feel that it was wrong that it wasn't, but that it was not overturned, that the charge with relation to that, and you say that in the op-ed. Do you want to clarify that?
Sure. The charges, the appellate court overturned 5 charges relating to this political log rolling that my husband was accused of, saying, well, do you think if I give the president who he wants for the Senate seat, he might appoint me to be Director of Health and Human Services? Those kind of things were totally overturned as perfectly legal politics. All that remains of our case are 3 fundraising allegations that, it's fundraising. My husband's actually the only politician in the history of the United States that's in prison for fundraising.
I know you say that you look at Bob McDonald's case and Bob Menendez's case, and you feel that your husband, that what they did was more egregious than what he did, and that politics came into play. How so?
Well, with Senator Menendez, he was given the jury instructions that we wanted in our case. If we were given the same law that he was given in his trial, my husband would be a free man today. But the court played politics, and they had to bury my husband so deep that he could never come out and protest. I mean, they gave him a 14-year sentence for asking for campaign contributions, essentially. Yeah. And so, go ahead.
I'm just curious. It seems to me that one of the strongest arguments that you have, and I know, you go back into the case and talk about the way the jury instructions and all of that, which is very interesting, is the length of the sentence. Is that something that you're pursuing with the White House in terms of a possible pardon for him, to say that the time served is enough? He's missed so much time with his 2 daughters growing up, and he will never get that back.
Oh, absolutely. My older daughter just graduated from college. She's heading off to graduate school. My younger daughter is, learning how to drive. And as I'm sitting there next to her in the passenger seat, I'm thinking this is a job for her father. He should be sitting here next to her, teaching her how to drive. And these are moments that we'll never get back. Rod's sentence is at least double that of any other elected official up until that point. And it's outrageous for what the charges are. Even if you take the charges for face value and believe somehow that it was a fair trial and that it's just, that sentence is so out of line from anything in the history of the United States.
Well, we will see where it goes. Patty, thank you very much. Good to have you here tonight, and we'll be watching it very closely. Our thanks to you. Let's bring in Mark Thiessen, American Enterprise Institute scholar, and Charlie Hurt, political columnist for the Washington Times. Both are Fox News contributors. Juan Williams is here as well, co-host of The Five and a Fox News political analyst. So, obviously, Patty Blagojevich wants this. She wants to get her husband out of prison, and who can blame her? He has missed a lot of time at home with their family. Mark, what do you make of her argument, though, and the fact that she is making it analogous in some ways to what she sees happening now, and she believes that it was politically motivated in terms of the length of time of that sentence?
Yeah, well, first of all, your heart breaks for her and for her family and for her kids, because they didn't do anything wrong. And they've lost their dad to a long prison term and a husband to a long prison term. So they're doing their best to try and figure out a way to get their husband back and father back. And that's completely understandable. However, their case has no legal merit. He was convicted of 18 counts. 13 were upheld on appeal. The 5 that were dismissed were because of bad jury instructions on a technicality. He was convicted of wire fraud, fraud, attempting to solicit bribes, and not just in the case of the Obama Senate seat. He was convicted of extorting a children's hospital for a $50,000 contribution in order to release money to them. He was convicted of extorting racetrack owners before he refusing to sign legislation for racetracks. So there's a lot of stuff that was going on here. This was not just one case. It was a pattern of extortion. And so they've lost all their appeals, and they have no choice but to get a commutation from the president. That's their only hope. And so what they're doing is they're playing the Comey card. They're playing the Mueller card to make their case.
And exactly. And you make excellent points about, he was impeached overwhelmingly by the Illinois House and Senate as well. I think the only person who voted not to impeach him was his wife's sister, who was serving in the House. So, it's good she stuck up for him. But Charlie, I do think that there's a legitimate claim in terms of the time served. And when you do look at Bob Menendez and Bob McDonnell in Virginia, and you look at those cases, there are a lot of similarities, and they got off much easier.
Sure, there's a great argument there in terms of the amount of time, because basically the courts have been sort of moot on the issue of what exactly is political corruption, and this is a major constitutional issue, and the reason is because there are a lot of skeezy politicians out there that do skeezy things. And exactly. We don't like that, and we want to do something to curb that. But of course, there's something more terrifying than a skeezy politician, and that is prosecutors that are that pursue politicians, professional prosecutors who pursue professional politicians, and we don't really understand everything that's going on, and we don't understand, are they politically motivated or are they not? And that's where I think that she raises a lot of interesting points at a time where we ought to be thinking about these sorts of things from the beginning. The reason the investigation into the Trump campaign and into those around Donald Trump is so alarming, the reason it's a major constitutional question is for exactly the reasons that she enunciated, even though they may not be the best case for this. But the idea that you would have these witch hunts that Donald Trump calls, but these investigations into politicians, and the only politician I've ever known who got off completely scot-free or got some advantage out of it was the Clintons.
Well, Juan, he makes a good point. In my mind, Juan, you look at this, and you do obviously have sympathy for Patty Blagojevich and for her daughters. And you do have to be circumspect about both sides of the equation, right? You have to look at the potential crime, and in this case, he was convicted on several counts, as we have pointed out several times here. You also have to look at the investigators, and you have to say, is it politically motivated? Because what we want is justice in this country, and people to have a comfort level that they're getting a fair shake when they're charged with something.
Well, I don't think there's any question about that, but I also think that you have to be fair to the idea that law enforcement has to hold the line against politicians who have power over budgets, who have power over contracts, who have power over appointments like Governor Blagojevich. And so I think what Patty Blagojevich is doing, and I totally feel for her, losing a husband and a father for that time. But I think what she's doing is trying to appeal to Donald Trump even here tonight and to make the case to President Trump, hey, we have a problem similar to yours. If you have a grudge against law enforcement, if you see law enforcement as excessive in the use of their powers and abusive, then guess what? I'm the perfect case for you to use. And we know that President Trump has pardoned Joe Arpaio, right? President Trump has gone out of the way to pardon Dinesh D'Souza, right? Fellow conservatives, if you will, especially Arpaio on the immigration issue. He's gone out of his way even to pardon Scooter Libby. And again, in every case, it seems like he's sending a message.
Correctly. What about Mark Rich? I mean, you can. Obama and Bush had hundreds of pardons when you look back at the list, hundreds of them. And in many cases, it's just a question of believing that there should be, some forgiveness for time served. And I don't think there's any question that there were laws broken here. And I'm not, and you're absolutely right. I mean, Patty Blagojevich is hoping to catch the attention of the president with this op-ed that she wrote. And she's raised these questions. We'll see if she gets anywhere. But we got to leave it there, you guys. Thank you very much. Great to see all of you tonight.
You're welcome.
Thanks, guys. So here is a question for you. Totally different subject. And Juan, I want you to weigh in on this. Have you tried to get a plastic straw in your Coke or your cocktail lately?
I brought myself a marine-friendly straw.
and I'm going to show you how it works.
John Stossel here to explain why plastic straws are disappearing. It's really hard to find them when you go out somewhere. And fighting back against the movement behind paper, even pasta with a hole in the middle has been offered as a straw, and bamboo that's being pushed on you. Also, coming up this evening on a much more serious note, the untold story of American hostage Otto Warmbier, held captive in North Korea. Tonight, a new theory about what really happened when one of the negotiators joins me next.
Otto did not die in vain. He had a lot to do with us being here today.